Hey everyone, my name is Matt, and I will be reviewing The Martian, starring Matt Damon and a few other high-profile actors who I will discuss later. But really what I want to focus on today is primarily a summary of the story without giving away too much information, just to orient you a little bit. Then the merits, of course, of this movie, and there are many. And then also what I would consider the downfall of this movie, at least for me personally. And I know that you've probably heard the rave reviews of The Martian and what a great movie it is. But I have some quips with the movie. But we'll get to the positive stuff first, and actually the summary. So, yet again, in yet another movie, we have Matt Damon stuck in space. And Matt Damon portrays Mark Watney, who is the botanist on the mission Ares 3, which is going to Mars, which is on Mars at the beginning of the movie. And a severe storm comes, and the crew ends up leaving Mars. And unfortunately, they leave Matt Damon behind. He was injured in a collision with some flying debris, and he cannot make it back to the ship in time. So the crew has to leave, or else they risk their own lives. So as you can imagine, the rest of the movie deals with his survival and how he survives on Mars and how he contacts Earth and how he eventually, well, you'll have to see what happens. And so basically what the movie is, from the point that he is stranded to the end, is alternating scenes of Watney, or Matt Damon, on Mars, and then we go back to Earth and we see what NASA is having to do to solve this problem from the Earth with their many resources. But again, I don't want to give too much away. Not only have you not seen the movie, but the movie kind of rides on this momentum of its conflict and its resolution. And giving too much away would kind of ruin the appeal. And so that's what I'm going to go to next, is the merits. And the way I describe the movie upon coming out of the theater is simply entertaining. It's this roller coaster of conflict and resolution, and that drives the movie, keeps the pace, keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. And the movie does a good job, depending on how you look at it, of remaining lighthearted. And so, as you can imagine, the situation that Mark Watney is in is quite dire. He is on the verge of death multiple times, and he's running on a clock as well. So he has a very limited amount of time to actually accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. But yet the movie, with certain interjections of humor and other things like the exclusively disco music score, all these things serve to keep the movie pretty lighthearted. And Childish Gambino's in the movie too, so that always helps. We'll get to that later. But depending on how you look at it, this could be good or bad. It might detract from the mood of the movie that you were anticipating to see, or it might make the movie some of the downs of the roller coaster when a conflict has been resolved and everything's looking good for Mark Watney. It might make those a little more entertaining. And that's what I want to get to next with the downfall of this movie. And again, coming out of the theater, my first impressions were, this is Apollo 13 without the scientific plausibility. This is Castaway without Wilson. And there was almost no character development in this movie. And what I mean by Apollo 13 without the scientific plausibility is Apollo 13 was a movie made after the Apollo 13 mission. It's a true story talking about the Apollo 13 spacecraft traveling to the moon and what went wrong. And so as you can imagine, in a true story, there is a great deal of scientific plausibility. All this stuff actually happened in real life, and the movie makers were able to take that information and put it onto the screen. And so, yes, there is scientific plausibility in Apollo 13 that this movie, The Martian, lacked. Then it's Castaway without Wilson. And so this movie, to me, did a very poor job of exploring the psychological effect of living on one's own. Mark Watney lived on Mars for 2 years by himself, and that would have a detrimental psychological effect to anyone. But this movie seems to totally do away with that. It deals with Watney's needs for water, for food, for shelter, and it fails to deal with his need for human companionship, which he has almost none of for 2 years. Lastly, there was no character development, and so we enter the movie with just the astronauts on Mars, and we know nothing about Watney. And lastly, Donald Glover, or Childish Gambino, but Donald Glover is his actor name, was in this movie, and he's actually the one that devises the solution that impacts Mark Watney at the end of the movie. And he receives almost no screen time after his proposal of this solution. So he's a very static character in that we meet him in his astrodynamics lab at NASA. We see him scribbling away, doing some calculations, and then emerge to propose the solution. The solution's accepted, and that's the last we see. And so it's just an interesting way of approaching that character, and one that I disagreed with, that I found actually detracted from the movie instead of helped it. But all in all, this movie was quite entertaining. It's worth the $10 to go see. Just don't expect an Apollo 13 or a Castaway.